Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the conference call with myself, Sam I Am, and my two guests, Nash and Ssmith from Dinar Daily. Say hi, guys.
Hi,
hello,
guys.
Everyone.
We just wanted to get together and talk a little bit about some of the latest developments and non-developments in Iraq. Primarily, we wanted to talk about Mosul because there's so much talk going around the Dinar community about once Mosul is liberated, then the currency reform will be enacted, and the 800 numbers will be dispersed, and whoever's in charge of the CBI is going to push the happy button, and everybody's going to be filthy rich. And so I thought that might be something we should discuss. What do you guys think?
Good idea. It's, after Mosul is somewhat completed and the RV doesn't happen, what happens next? What are the gurus going to go to and point to as to why the RV is still being delayed?
My guess will be it has something to do with Putin.
Well, I saw on the forum that Reap and Sow had pointed out, because he's been following a little bit about Yosef and Swervy McGee, but he had mentioned before the gurus there had even brought it to attention that North Korea would be an excuse, because there are 209 countries that had to agree, and if North Korea is firing missiles off, there's only 208 countries that are agreeing now. And so he had pointed out that North Korea would be an excuse, and by golly, was he right or what?
Very clever. Well, yeah, there's always going to be something in the news that they can pin it to. I mean, they said that when Trump was elected, of course, I don't know how long you guys have been following this, but when I came into it, that was what people were saying. Donald Trump has $1 billion dinar.
I remember so well.
Yeah, that was when he was not a presidential candidate. He was just a billionaire.
Yeah, 2011. 2011.
Yeah, 2010, 2011. I was hearing that. Mm-hmm. And of course, when Trump got elected, everybody knew. Well, Trump owns Dinar. Once he's inaugurated, that's it. He's gonna sign off on the RV. Yeah. And,
didn't quite happen.
No, it didn't. So now they're looking for some other excuse, and I think that the excuse du jour is Mosul, and then once Mosul is no longer an issue, because I think it's probably going to be, it looks like they're making some headway. It's probably going to be liberated in the next month or so. And
probably sooner than that, but let's month good enough.
Well, people have been saying any day now for a couple of months, so I'm just trying to be conservative. But when nothing happens, then people are going to have to reassess their intel sources. But you and I know, you two and I know that it's not about Mosul. It's not about whoever's in charge of the CBI or whoever's in charge of the government. It has nothing to do with the UN or the Bank of International Settlements or the IMF. It's really about their money supply and their reserves.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they derive the value of the currency. And the value of the currency is where it should be when you take into consideration 70 trillion dinar, I think, was the latest figure that I saw in their M1 money supply, and less than $50 billion in their $50 billion in their foreign currency reserves now. So, if anything, I think it's a little bit overvalued.
And it doesn't, it can't get any more simple than that. It is absolutely where it needs to be.
Yeah, it's the simplest of formulas. You take the money supply, you divide it by the reserves, and you're going to come out with a figure. And that figure, as long as it's close to what the CBI is posting, there you go. That's what it is. Now, obviously, in order to change that figure that the CBI has posted, two things have to happen. Maybe more, but at least two things have to happen. for it to increase. You pull the money supply back, or you increase the reserves.
Mm-hmm.
That's as simple as that.
Well, there's one other option. Change.
I knew there would be.
Change the percentage that they're backing the dinar, because for the longest time their policy was to back it 100%, which they're not doing anymore. Now, the reason they were backing it 100%, because if you look at Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Qatar and Bahrain, those countries don't back their currencies 100%, but those countries aren't a hellhole like Iraq is. The reason they have to back it 100% is they're not required to. It's just for all practical purposes they have to, because nobody has any confidence in their country or their currency. So they back it 100% so that people will do business with them. Now, if all of a sudden everything in Iraq was to become paradise overnight, no more sectarian violence, no more ISIS, they develop other sectors of their economy. It's just overnight, everything just becomes hunky-dory like Kuwait. They wouldn't have to back their currency 100% anymore. They could just back it 20 or 30% like these other countries are doing. Then they'd have more room to bump it up. But how likely is that?
Yeah, getting the security and all that stuff in Iraq. Yeah, that's going to be a little bit. They got bombs going off, every day in Baghdad, practically.
Yeah.
Forget about Mosul and some of the stuff in northern Iraq. When you start going into the middle of Iraq, you still have bombs going off, killing people every day. And in a capital city where you have bombs going off every day, they're not exactly too secure.
Right.
So, I mean, everybody, and you can see it in the forums, everybody's talking about security. And so they figure, well, when Mosul is secure, the whole country's secure, and they can push that button and it's going to RV. But Mosul is not the end of ISIS. Mosul is just the end of ISIS in Mosul. There are still parts of the country that are to the south and to the west that still have ISIS in it that still have to be eliminated. And they're working on it. They're doing a bang-up job, if I can use that term. But once they're out of Iraq, the country's still not secure. Right. And then, obviously, ISIS is still in Syria. And they're going to be there for a little while longer. And if you look at the news articles coming out of Iraq and other places like that, they're going to secure the borders so that ISIS doesn't come back into Iraq. And then once they secure the borders a little bit better, they can now focus on the little pockets of ISIS that are left in Iraq, and they're all over the place. And then they have other issues in Iraq because, like I said, they still have almost daily bombings in Baghdad, or if not Baghdad, Kirkuk or Ramadi or wherever. There's still daily bombings going off. So by no means is Iraq going to be secure, or at least 100% secure. But no country needs to be 100%. How about 99%?
The question I would ask was how stable was Iraq before ISIS came in? They weren't that stable before.
When Al-Qaeda was running amok.
Right.
Yeah, it was another organization.
Sectarian violence. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the Sunnis and the Shiites and the Kurds are wanting to pull out. And I mean, they don't play well together in Iraq.
Right.
Well,
you get rid of ISIS and you still have all of this other to deal with.
Well, then that brings up the question is, when was the last time Iraq was secure, period? How far back in history do you have to go where you had a secure Iraq?
Well, they were fairly stable under Saddam Hussein, but, at what price?
Yeah, and back in the 50s and 60s, weren't they?
Back in the 50s and 60s was a kind of a good time for them, yes.
Yeah, they're relatively westernized, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole region was. Back then, the teenagers in Iran were wearing, what do they call them, bell-bottoms. There's a picture of the bin Laden family And,
right, I've seen that.
The girls are wearing pants, and there's
and skirts above the knee, and
they were listening to the Beatles. The girls were wearing pants. The guys were wearing. There's Osama bin Laden, 14 years old in that photo, had bell bottoms on. So that region, even Iran, was westernized back then, and that's one reason the whole jihad or Islamic Revolution happened, was because they didn't want the westernization of that region. It was kind of a reaction to the policies of the Shah of Iran and others who were trying to bring them into the 20th century. So, you have to go back 50 years or so, probably.
And so, basically, if Iraq is not going to have 100% security in their country, what percentage of security would be kind of acceptable to kind of call the country, well, we're mostly secure, we should be okay? Because no country is really secure.
Yeah.
Because you look at the London bombings and stuff like that, and the Twin Towers here in the United States, and a few other places where they have some bombings every now and then. So no country is going to be 100% secure. But what part of Iraq being somewhat secure is going to constitute security? At least as far as the RV goes. Let's call it that.
Yeah. That's a good question. Shabibi was talking about this 5 years ago, before ISIS came into the country, and they weren't stable enough back then to enact the currency reform plan. And then Shabibi got axed, and everything was derailed.
Right. Well, they didn't even.
Go ahead.
Back then, they didn't even have decent infrastructure, as far as they didn't have 24-hour-a-day electricity in a lot of the areas.
Yeah.
They still don't in quite a few areas.
Yeah, in more rural areas, probably, yeah. So, the bottom line here is that even if they became stable, even if ISIS wasn't an issue, even if the sectarian violence ended, you still have the numbers to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what so many people don't understand. The security situation keeps them from enacting the currency reform. But their currency reform plan is not a revaluation. It's a redenomination. And the reason they have to redenominate their way back to parity with the U.S. dollar rather than revalue is because of the bloated money supply that they have.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get around that.
And that's a zero-sum game. It's like a reverse stock split. No one's getting rich. And I just did Ray's call notes, and he was asked a question by someone on the call today about taking off the 3 zeros. What is their $25,000 dinar note going to be adjusted? Is it going to be adjusted to 25? Ray says, not yours, but the ones in Iraq. Blatant bull. I mean, an out-and-out lie.
What's the difference between a 25K note in the United States, Britain, Canada, South America, whatever, and a 25K note in Iraq? There's no difference. The note is the note, and you see it all over the forums.
Right.
A dinar is a dinar is a dinar. If you take that 25K note from the United States and fly it right over to Iraq, it is worth 25K.
Yeah, a lot of these people, I hate to say it, but a lot of these people involved in the dinar world have never done any traveling abroad. And they don't understand exchange rates. They don't understand currency valuation in general. I've traveled to South America a couple of times, and the currency has the same exchange rate whether you're here or there. It's just that you can't use that currency to buy anything here.
That's correct.
When you go down there, it's accepted for goods and services. Nobody uses the dinar outside of Iraq.
Yeah, that was posted actually at a Dinar Daily chat. Someone posted in there about the value and how it can be sold in the U.S. And I had kind of said, okay, I'll answer that one. That one's not too hard to talk about. The dinar can be sold or exchanged to anyone. It's just not worth much unless you're in Iraq. Now, it is worth something once you leave Iraq. Chaz over there at Dinar Daily is a good example. He exchanged his dinar for a Subaru. So he got a car out of his deal. Yeah, he's a happy camper. He got a Subaru. He exchanged his dinar and he got a Subaru. So he thought he was doing real good with that. So he actually used dinar, and the value of whatever transaction he made, I don't remember the numbers of how much he had and what he traded for it, but he got a Subaru out of it. But all that was, and he even told the folks, because they were following the dinar thing and stuff like that, he even told the folks that, that's not a real good idea. It's a lot of, I hate to use the word scam, but it fits. But there's a lot of scam around it. He told the folks that, and they still got the Subaru for it, and they took the dinar.
Oh, well.
So that's why I had to answer. I mean, it's not usable for much unless you're in Iraq. Now, obviously, if you have a lot of dinar, you're not going to be buying anything really anywhere unless someone wants your currency and they'll trade you for it. But other than that, it's going to be in the country of Iraq where you can use it on a daily basis. You can't take your dinar and go down to the local, gas station supermarket and purchase anything with it, no matter what country you're in, other than Iraq.
Yeah. Oh, it's possible. Without being over there, I couldn't say, but it's possible that Iraqi dinar would be accepted in certain places like Syria or, what other bordering countries? Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. I don't know.
Jordan,
it's possible.
As long as you're a neighbor country, you will probably be able to use that dinar at some place to do purchases for goods and services or whatever. Not everybody's going to do it, but you can go down to the local exchange company and exchange your dinar for the local currency and probably get a fantastic rate for it because you're near the country, where they just go across the border or they just go to their local bank because their local bank has a link to the Iraqi bank, and they exchange back and forth all the time because they probably have some vacationers from those local countries that are around Iraq that go and visit Iraq. They got friends, family, whatever, and they bring their currency that they have from that country and make their exchange in Iraq.
Right. Just the same thing is true when you get up close to the Canadian border. Canadian dollars are accepted in some places in the United States, and the U.S. dollar is accepted in cities in Canada close to the border. Same thing with the Mexican peso along the Rio Grande. You're going to find some people who will take pesos because they go back and forth to Mexico all the time.
And it's not a big deal to them to do the currency exchange. But the other thing, too, in Iraq, it's not the dinar that you can use to purchase goods and services there. You can use the dollar.
Exactly.
Almost everywhere in Iraq, you can use the dollar to get whatever you want.
In fact, they prefer the dollar.
Despite what the gurus have been telling you, it's not illegal to use the United States dollar in Iraq. They've been saying it for years. They pulled all the dollars out. You can only use dinar. Well, that's BS language there.
Yeah. Well, while we're discussing currencies, what do you guys think about the Zim, the Rupiah, the Dong?
Well, the Zim, that's a kind of like a hot topic in dinar land, and I guess they're calling it Zim land now. The Zim has been demonetized, and just about everybody knows it. It's not a currency anymore. When it was a currency, you'll find that all the dinar dealers would sell the Zim. As soon as they took the Zim off of its temporary status or whatever status they were holding at for a while, and they demonetized it, those currency dealers stopped selling it. And the only place you can get it now is eBay.
Yep.
So, but the other thing about the Zim is people are saying that it's a bond note because it's printed on bond paper. Well, folks, it's just ridiculous. Bond paper is the same paper that you use in your computer printer to print your documents. Bond paper that they used to print the Zim notes on was a financial decision. They didn't pay for the more expensive paper to print their currency on. They saved money and printed it on bond paper. The other thing about the Zim is that it's, quote, a historic bond. And when you ask people about that, they can't provide you any information as far as how it came to be a historic bond. Nowhere is there anything posted anywhere of how it became to be a historic bond. It's just magic. The gurus say it's a historic bond, so it must be a historic bond.
Yeah. Tell that to the people in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, they have signs up on their restrooms as far as the proper use of a Zim note, and one of them is to not use it as backside paper, let's put it politely. But the other thing with the Zim note is people say that it's a bearer bond. And the only reason they say it's a bearer bond because it's written right on the note. It says it right there, bearer. Pay to the bearer. Doesn't say bearer bond or anything like that. It just says pay to the bearer. So there's a lot of things going around with the Zim note that people are making it out to be what it's not. And you only find this information coming from these Dinar land gurus. You don't have it coming from anywhere else. Just Dinar land gurus. And the other thing is the rates they're associating with it. Along with this RV that everybody's talking about, is that depending on which camp you're in, whether it's going to be worth 13 cents with the removal of 6 zeros or 9 zeros or however many zeros of the day they want to rate it at, to it's going to be worth $125,000 per Zim. So if you got $100 trillion note, multiply that times 125,000 per Zim, it's pretty much an astronomical figure that most calculators can't calculate it. It'll error out a little bit. But where's the funding going to come from to pay for all that? No one's quite figured that out yet. The country that issues a currency honors the currency. Zimbabwe is broke. They don't have any money whatsoever to pay anybody for any of the Zim notes. No other country is going to take on that debt, because if they're going to pay for Zim notes, they're basically taking on a debt.
Right.
So why would they do that? And one of the things you'll hear in Zimland, I guess we'll call it that, just because we're talking about the Zim, is when you ask someone a question directly, their usual response is, well, Zimbabwe has a lot of gold and minerals in their country. Well, if it's in the ground, it's still in the ground. It can be there today, it can be there tomorrow, it can be there 100 years, it can be there 1,000 years from now. If it's in the ground, it's not going to be money that they can pay for that note.
Right.
So
yeah, when we were backing the dollar with gold back in the days of the gold standard, it was sitting there in bars in Fort Knox. It wasn't still in the ground waiting to be mined.
Right. Well, that's the same thing with dinar. I mean, people are saying that they're going to back the dinar with oil. Well, Not if it's still in the ground. I mean, it's all got to be mined or refined or whatever, out of the ground and sitting in a vault somewhere or sitting somewhere where it can be easily dispersed to pay for those notes you hold. And it's not.
Yeah, but we don't even have the gold standard anymore, so why would anybody be going to an asset-backed currency when it was such a dismal failure and we had to come up with a current system in order to salvage it? I mean, Marcus Curtis and I have talked about this. The bank failure rate in the days of the gold standard was atrocious. And we got away from it. We got away from the Bretton Woods system. Last year in the United States, there was one bank failure. So as many flaws as there are in the current system, it is far better than the system we had back in the days of gold. People were hoarding the gold, and it was just unmanageable because the gold supply wasn't growing in proportion with the population. And you're going to have the same problem with any other commodity. You just can't back, in the current modern world, you cannot back currencies with a commodity like we had with the gold standard. You can have some gold in your securities, in your reserves, but just the old standard of nations bringing their gold and saying we want to exchange our gold, we want to exchange our currency rather, for gold and take our gold back, that can't happen anymore because it was just not a manageable system.
You know, come on. And them, I mean, that's just absurd listening to the ravings of Joseph and the benevolent Chinese elders.
There's a call that came out today with Joseph on it. Someone asked Joseph kind of a question about, I think it was, it was a little while this morning when I heard the call, but asked a question in a way that he didn't like. It was like, prove it. And boy, he wanted that caller to get off the line as fast as he could.
Yeah, what do you have skin in the game? Why are you, what's your perspective on all this? I think that was kind of the thrust of the question.
Yeah.
That Joseph blew up. How dare you question him?
Yeah, it's the same with all the gurus. I mean, if you were to question a guru or, whoever it is as to where are you getting this information or, well, no, that can't happen, you're going to be taking a nap in their forum real quick.
But that's where Tony was fun because he'd lose his temper sometimes.
Yes.
He wouldn't just delete the call. He would go off on a rampage.
I think we've kind of turned the corner in the Dinar community. It seems like there's just a few stragglers left, and their credibility is crumbling daily. I mean, there's only a couple of holdovers from the days when I was doing my blog. You still got Dave Schmidt and Bruce from the big
and
call.
Frank.
I guess.
And Frank.
Yeah. Yeah, Frank is still out there.
There's BGG, I think, is still there.
Okay, more than a couple.
More than a few. There's still the old folks there. I mean, they've all got their wares they want to market. I mean, Frank's openly selling his products, and Dave is selling his workshops, seminars. Telling folks that he can tell you more information at the workshops than he can over the internet because once it's on the internet, everybody knows about it. It's like, what have you got to hide? Either you have information or you don't have information.
Right.
So that's just one of the little marketing tactics they use to sell their workshops. And Dave's pretty open about it. He tells you that's where he makes his income from, is selling those workshops.
Right.
But it's based on a lie.
Yeah. I remember Stryker used to talk about, I have to charge you guys a monthly fee, otherwise I'm going to have to go get a job. And I thought, oh, God forbid
Yeah.
that you should have to go and get a respectable, honest job. No, he's got to get $10 a month from, what was it, like 3,000 or 4,000 people? I don't know how many. I don't know if he had that many or not. But I just remember him saying that, I got to make a living, people, and otherwise I'm going to have to go get a job.
Yeah, and it's
Well,
actually to facilitate that living for me.
Yeah. Well, that brings up the money-making aspect on some of these gurus. They sell VIP memberships.
Right.
$15 a month. That's $180 a year that people are paying for VIP memberships.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's $15 a month, now you get 100 people that are buying a membership for $15 a month. Just do the math, and that's what these people are making every month. Yeah. Now add a little bit more because it's not just 100 people. There's a few hundred people that are doing that, and then you got I think Frank does a VIP membership.
No, Adam Montana and all.
Adam Montana does a VIP membership, and he occasionally will offer a discounting program because he needs money. That's when you know Adam needs money, is he'll offer some discounted memberships for a year or something like that, so that he's got some income.
Yeah.
And Cap, I think he was selling memberships or access to the forum with Admin Bob.
Didn't he have
translating some articles and stuff? But Admin Bob has since passed away, but he had a membership going on there.
Yeah,
and he has that text. Do you want to get on that rapid response text or whatever you want to call it? As soon as the 800 numbers come out, you'll get a text. It'll only cost you $7.99. We're back to the Mosul thing again. What's going to happen after Mosul? What are these gurus going to do? What news article are they going to point to saying that stopped the RV?
Yeah, I'm thinking North Korea or just any other big dust up.
Anything. Well, that brings up Dr. Clark.
Oh.
Dr. Clark. He would predict that there are things that have to happen in order for this RV to go, and they know what it is, yet they can't tell anybody.
Oh, he came out with another doozy today.
Yeah, and then every 3 months he says, well, we knew this would happen, and this is why the RV is not going to take place, but 3 months from now.
Nobody ever tells you ahead of time what's going to happen. They always tell you after it happens what it means and why it happened. But I've never heard anybody predict anything that really happened accurately before it happened.
Well, that brings up another thing from Western states. Admin Bill had made a statement that it's a scheduled event. Okay, where's the schedule?
Right.
Yeah, and why does the schedule keep
Where's
changing?
the schedule? I mean, post the schedule so everybody can see it. They know when the event's going to happen, when things start magically happening off the schedule. This is a scheduled event. Well, here's this event. It doesn't even have to be accurate to the day. It just has to be, this is what's next in the schedule for the RV to happen. And so when people see that event has happened, they can scratch it off their schedule and look for the next event. Scratch that event off the schedule and look for the next event. So if it's all a scheduled event, where's the schedule?
Right.
Well, he's obviously collecting names, for his little MLM deals. He wants to, he's looking for members to sell his various products to.
Mm.
It finally came out. It took a while for it to come out, but yeah, he got called out the first time he posted his travel agency, and that came out, and he immediately took that post down. I mean, some little sneak in Western states posted it all over the place. I don't know about that one.
I don't either, but we know where that post is going to live forever and ever and ever over at Dinar Daily, because we got you, Admin Bill.
Yep. He wanted to get some credits for his travel so he can go travel on the money of other people's backs.
Yeah, he's into marketing, I mean, the guy who's got a crappy job, and he's just looking for any way to make money, and he doesn't care how he goes about it.
And you can't blame people for wanting to make money. I mean, people are in their retirement age. You know, when you look at a lot of it, the Social Security is just not really cut out to what they expected it to be, and they're just looking to have a little extra, you know, live a little bit better and stuff like that. So you can't blame people for marketing a little bit here and there.
Be upfront
to make a little
about
money.
It. Be upfront about it, though.
Yeah, I mean, why are you targeting a group of people who are barely making it and taking their last dollar? Yeah, and that's been going on through Dinar land forever. They will not talk about the actual event unless they can take a mistranslated article and say, well, here's proof. Well, no, it's not proof, but nice try. But they will not talk about the event.
They can't, because there's no basis in reality of the event ever happening. As Sam went through earlier, the money mechanics do not work. It's impossible. So there's no way they could articulate how it is going to happen. Right. And none of these damn Dinarians are smart enough to pin them down.
They have to invent new mechanisms in order to justify it, like the global currency reset or monetizing assets in the ground. They've got to change the system because the current system won't allow it. So that's why you're always hearing them talk about, we're going over to a reset or a new system. And
Jassara.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, the benevolent Chinese elders.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah, Dave actually clarified that a little bit on one of his calls. Everybody seemed to think that there was only one Chinese elder that was doing all this. Dave said there were 5. Zap listens to one. Dave has another one of those grandfathers that he talks to. And Swervy McGee, Richard McKim, talks to a different one. So there's 3 out of the 5 grandfathers that they talk to that are going to release these 60 to 80 accounts out to pay for all this. And would you think about it, the 60 to 80 zeros behind all in those accounts, it's more money that's ever existed, ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
If they had trillions of dollars, either in gold or whatever, sitting around that they wanted to dispense to people for humanitarian purposes.
Exactly.
Why do you need to buy these currencies? Why do you need to purchase a Zim, or why do you need to purchase a dinar, or why do you need to purchase a dong in order for that to happen?
Right. Just prove to them what a great humanitarian you are and what a great plan you have for your humanitarian projects. The reason the currency is required is because that's how they get you.
Yep.
I mean, rather than go out there and try and recruit hundreds of people for your humanitarian projects, you've got a ready-made crowd there in the dinar community. It's much easier to market it to them than to go out and find people who will believe that there's Chinese elders ready to dispense trillions of dollars. You've already got a self-made or a set-up crowd waiting to receive a bunch of money. So you just convince them, well, you get the money when this reset happens. You don't need no reset. You don't need no stinking reset. Just give us the money for the humanitarian projects. We'll go start clothing the naked and feeding the hungry and everything. No, you don't need that. But the gurus need that.
Why don't those benevolent Chinese elders do their own good humanitarian works with these trillions they have sitting around? I mean, don't they have some kids that, need something to do?
Uh-huh.
Why leave it to these anonymous dinarians to ramrod all these projects? I mean, if they have money.
The other thing, too, is you got the math skills involved with some of these folks that are doing this. T-Man 23 I mean, he's got some tremendous math skills. I think you called him out on one of his posts, and I called him out on another. The math doesn't work the way he's explaining it. It really doesn't. I mean, and we just need to buy these people some calculators. I mean,
yeah, that's really one of the things that got my attention to wake me up, because I used to be a dinar investor, speculator. I had 8 million dinar at one point, and I was a mod at Dinar Vets at a Montana site. Ada Montana supposedly was a Harvard graduate and a self-made multimillionaire or whatever, with entrepreneur with contacts all over the world. And the guy couldn't do basic math. And I said, no, wait a minute. If he went to Harvard Business School, which I would assume that it was business school rather than the law school, if he went to Harvard Business School and graduated from Harvard, he's got all these contacts, and he's done all these incredible deals, why can't he do basic math? Something's wrong there. You know, it took me a while. I'm kind of slow, but I finally figured it out. If he can't do basic math, he's probably not a Harvard graduate. And if he didn't graduate from Harvard, he's a liar. He's a fraud. And if he's a fraud, this whole thing might be a scam. Yeah, it's amazing to me when I'll post something like a dinar video on YouTube, and then we get in the comments thread, and I'll explain everything. I'll explain the money supply, give them a link. I'll explain the foreign currency reserves. I'll explain the CBI's policy of exchange rate stability. I'll explain the fraud charges against all these different dinar people. I'll lay the whole thing out there and explain to them why it's not going to happen, and then they'll say, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll laugh at you all the way to the bank. It's like, oh, you laugh all the way to the bank. Have fun.
That's not an argument. You know, tell me why I'm wrong. Don't just say, well, that's your opinion. We'll see. No, there's no we'll see. Okay, I just told you why. It's like saying, you know, you can't run a car on water. You got to pour gas in the gas tank, because water won't ignite, and an internal combustion engine needs gas. Well, that's your opinion. We'll see.
Yeah, and it's just like, you know, it just. It's crazy. I mean, it's just crazy.
Some of it is entertaining, though, to see it, and some of them just make you just shake your head, going, really? But anyway, I mean, I think the main purpose of what we are all doing is we're just trying to get the information out there for people to look at, just to consider. I mean, it's when we're not, you know, bashing the crap out of the gurus for their lies, they're saying, but, you know, just take a look at it, just consider it, you know, put your own calculator to work and see if it adds up, see if it subtracts out, and take a look at it. But there are folks that are so blind, I mean, they'll say, you know, talk to the hand because the ears aren't going to hear you. Well, you know what? We're not going to talk to the hand. We're not going to talk to your ears. Just you're on your own. If you're that far gone and your children can't even help you, then have fun. But there's a lot of folks that are just getting into this, and I see it all the time. And it doesn't take much to convince them that what they're getting themselves into is not the best of ideas, but at least we're providing some of the information and putting it out there. It's something that wasn't out there years ago, but it's out there now. We're able to provide some information for them to consider and take a look at and make their own decisions.
Right.
You know.
Now, if you got questions, I'd like to invite you to come to Iraq Currency Watch. We've got tons of resources there that you can listen to audios, you can read blog posts, you can get information on who these guys are and their backgrounds and so forth. And DinarDaily.net, a great resource. They've got a forum there, a lot of good people who are willing to help you out, answer any questions you might have.
And join in the
advantage.
guru bashing, you know. If you want to bash the gurus, that's the place to do it. You're not allowed to do it on the other forums, but knock yourself out. Right now, guest posting is available, and, hey, bash away.
Right. Yeah, and also, if you've been banned from Western states, I'll bring over snippets from their chat every day, so it's almost like you've never left.
And from around the other places. There's also news articles at Dinar Daily. I mean, a lot of the news articles that are posted there, either Pony brings them in or I help Pony out with the news sometimes. It's news that you won't find on the other forums. They're afraid to put some of the articles there because it kind of takes away from the narrative of the RV.
Right.
I mean, I don't bring over the daily bombings and the horrific pictures of what's there because I think people understand that. But occasionally I'll bring some of that stuff over so that people can see exactly what's going on in Iraq. And this is not a country that's going to revalue their currency. This is a country that's going to rebuild their country when they get money. I mean, they're getting a whole bunch of loans in order to do that. You know, a country that's getting a whole bunch of loans is not going to revalue their currency. They're struggling.
Yeah, it's going to. If people talk about their currency going international, they don't understand what that means. The countries have currencies that are international, that are traded on Forex, and that are exchanged at locations all over the world when there's a demand for the currency. And what makes demand for a currency is when the country produces products that the world wants. The reason so many countries have Japanese yen is people want to buy Toyotas and Mitsubishis and Japanese electronics.
Honda generators for their emergency preparedness, whatever you call those people. The name's on the tip of my tongue. But the preparers.
Preppers.
Preppers, yeah. There you go. I knew that would roll off.
Yeah, the reason a currency goes international is because there's a demand for the currency so that people can buy the product that the country is producing. Iraq is not producing anything other than oil, and it's sold for U.S. dollars. So there's no demand. You don't just flip a switch and make a currency go international. It goes international after decades of moving to a market economy with a diverse economy, producing a lot of jobs in the service sector and a lot of jobs in the manufacturing sector and the agriculture field. That's going to take time, decades. So don't expect the dinar to go international for the next 2, 3, 4 years. It's going to take a while, if it ever happens.
Yeah, you had an interesting conversation about how the value of the currency would change, and it had to do with inflation.
Yeah, you have to, especially with Iraq's situation where they have a dual currency system. They've got to manage the amount of dollars in circulation and the amount of dinar in circulation. If there's too many dinar and not enough dollars, supply and demand takes over. People want dollars, so the dinars will lose value and the dollars will become more valuable. I'm talking about in the market. I'm not talking about the official exchange rate. But eventually, if the market rate dips low enough, it's going to affect the official exchange rate. They're going to have to make some sort of adjustment. Now, this is what happened back in January 2012, because the coalition forces all left Iraq. Well, not all, but 90% of them left Iraq at the end of 2011. And as they left the country, they exchanged their dinars and they got U.S. dollars or euros or Great British pounds, wherever they were going, Aussie dollars, they exchanged whatever dinar they had for their native currency before they left the country. And all of a sudden there was a surplus of dinars and not enough dollars. And inflation began to spike up as a result. And that's why they went from $11.70 to the dollar to $11.66 to the dollar in January of 2012. They did that little increase in the value as a way of offsetting that spike in inflation. And it worked. The inflation rate came back down. Now, I'm not an economist. I don't understand all of the dynamics of this. I just know that Shabibi said revaluation depends on inflation. If inflation is a problem, then we'll look at raising the value. But he wasn't talking about going from a tenth of a penny to $1. He was talking about going from 0.000857 to 0.000859, something like that. Very small adjustment, just enough to get the inflation rate back down. That's why they revalue for their monetary policy. It has nothing to do with creating wealth for the people in their country. And this is why they've had the auctions in the country. The auctions is one of the ways that they manage the balance of payments and currency flows in the country to keep that market rate in the country from fluctuating too much. They want stability with the exchange rate. And it's something you'll never hear from the gurus is how important exchange rate stability is. But you will hear that from economists. I don't know, did that cover it?
I think that pretty much covered it. I mean, that's one of the ways they control the rate of exchange in the country. It has to do a little bit with inflation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, inflation was a huge problem 7-8 years ago. They were up over 70% at one point. And Shabibi went to this crawling peg strategy from November 1st, 2006 to January 1st, 2009. They bumped the value up just a little bit at a time until it was a total increase of about 26%. And they brought that inflation rate down from over 70% down to about 7 or 8%. I don't know how that works. I just know that it does. That was their policy. And once it stabilized around 7 or 8%, once the inflation rate stabilized, then they stabilized the exchange rate because they'd accomplished the goal in raising the value for 26 months. That was the only reason they did it. And the dinar community saw the value going up, and they were thinking, whoopee, if it keeps going up like this, we're going to make a lot of money. But it was just a monetary policy to bring inflation down. And I remember my days at Dinar Vets listening to people, why did they quit raising the value? We don't understand. It used to go up almost every week. Well, that was why. But none of the gurus understood that. But the crawling peg strategy was just to bring inflation down. They had no intention of raising the value indefinitely and making people wealthy. I thought I lost you there for a minute. Okay.
Oh, we were just listening intensely to the information you were just passing on.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about what's going on now, but I lived this stuff for 3 years, watching it intensely. I was absolutely just fixated on everything. And this is where I cut my teeth and I got my education. And I got into those IMF documents and I read those articles and I figured it out. And I said, holy crap, this really is a scam. To the point that I feel like a schmuck. And I said, I'm going after these guys. I think we've covered pretty much the gurus, Mosul, and the currencies of the day.
Yeah, the only thing I had a thought of was that, most of these calls start with a disclaimer for some odd reason. They have to tell people that, they're not currency experts and lawyers and tax advisors and stuff like that. But I think it's good that maybe we should have a little disclaimer of our own. If you need the advice of a lawyer, by all means, go get a lawyer. Right. If you have a question about taxes, don't ask the gurus. Go ask a tax advisor.
Right.
And if you need the advice of, a financial expert, these gurus have shown they are not financial experts. But go talk to a financial expert.
Exactly.
I mean,
and I interviewed a currency expert twice at Dinar Douchebags, a guy named John Jagerson. You can read those interviews where
those are
somebody who, I'm sorry?
Those are excellent, by the way.
Yeah, John Jagerson
they're on both sites, too. They're on your site and they're on Dinar Daily, the Rock Currency Watch and Dinar Daily. You can read them.
Great.
You can comment on them.
Yeah, that's, let's see, I guess that was about 2012 when I did those interviews. And John Jagerson, he does consulting for Fortune 500 companies. He's dealt with exchange rates and currencies, Forex, for years. And he was one of the first ones to come out and say that this isn't going to happen. These guys are lying to you. That's not how revaluation works. And so far everything that's happened has pretty much confirmed everything John Jagerson said, even though people called him names and said he didn't know what he was talking about. So yeah, I'm not a currency expert. I'm not an investment expert, but I have interviewed a guy who is considered an expert. So you can go and read that interview. John Jagerson with a J.
So basically, with our research that we've done, we're not exactly experts, but we are familiar with what the experts have been saying, and we post what they say, including the links to go, look for yourself. Everybody can do their own research and look for all this stuff themselves. But if they're just going to be researching what the gurus say, I mean, I've seen it. People with stacks of notebooks, they've written down everything a guru said because they think it's, got something to do with their currency investment. It really doesn't. Go talk to some real people in the investment community and see what they've got to say. And one question to ask them, if you ask them about like the dinar or the zim specifically, would they invest in it? And if they were to tell you yes, ask them how much they've invested in it themselves. And if they say they don't have any invested in it themselves, then that tells you right there that they're not even confident that anything's going to happen.
And also, that's why I do that 5 years ago in Dinar Land thread that's going over at Dinar Daily, just so it catalogs the lies. How long they've been going on, the BS these gurus have fed to you ad nauseum year after year. I mean, use your brains, folks.
Yeah,
you got to look at it in a different perspective too. I had 8 million dinar at one point. I understand how hard it is to accept the fact that this can't happen. I didn't want to believe it, but the numbers don't lie. And when you see how many gurus do lie and mislead you, and once you find out that Executive Order 13303 has nothing to do with currency, once you find out that that deleting the zeros does not mean pulling in the 30 notes. By the way, the 10,000 note has 4 zeros. So when they say it just means pulling in the 30 notes, that's not a 30 note. That's a 40 note, guys. No, the gurus are lying to you. They're not pulling in the 30 notes. The Delete the Zeros project is a redenomination. Okay, we use the word LOP in the Dinar community. I didn't want to believe that, but when I studied it, there was no other conclusion you could come to. And once I finally accepted reality and I sold my dinar, I made it my mission to inform people.
everything that I could find on these guys that were lying to you, everything I could find about the currency reform plan, about economics. I put all the information I could out there because that information was not available when I came into this. If it had been, I don't think I would have ever bought Dinar.
Yeah, because I was looking around researching, and your site, Dinar Douchebags, was the only site that had viable information, you know, the nuts and bolts of how this is not going to be able to work ever. Everything else was just rah, 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 go RV, woo-hoo, and silliness from these gurus.
Yeah. We just about exhausted our time here, covered all the material, I think. The bottom line here is that Mosul is not a factor in the value of the dinar. If Mosul is liberated and ISIS is completely eradicated from the country, you still have the problem of the money supply and the foreign currency reserves figures. You still have the sectarian violence. You still have a country that's 90% dependent on oil for their GDP. So those factors don't change. So don't believe the gurus saying that the liberation of Mosul is going to bring about an RV. When the year ends and the value of the dinar is no higher than it is now, then you'll know that the gurus were lying to you, and some people out there were trying to give you the facts. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, guys. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for listening, everybody. Come and see us at dinardaily.net or at IraqCurrencyWatch.com. Until next time, this is Sam I Am. Happy trails.